Over 1 million Americans live full-time in an RV. Why? Well, the reasons might surprise you. In today's video, we'll go into 10 different reasons why people live full-time in RVs. Okay, so the first reason is that RVs make fabulous transitional housing. Think about it. They're mobile, they're movable, they're a decent financial commitment, but they're still not the same price as housing. I mean, not yet, right? Oh, this economy, am I right? So one thing I found a lot of times when we were living full-time in an RV at the RV park is that our neighbors were often people who were in transition somehow. So one big thing was people who were selling one house and then moving to another, and they didn't want the contingencies on either side. They didn't want a complicated deal. They would use the RV that they had as their vacation home. They'd move into it while they were selling their old house, and they would live in it as their old house was closing and they were shopping for a new house. I saw that all the time. Another thing I saw a lot was people who had ailing relatives. So they wanted to come and take care of a relative who lived somewhere else, but they wanted to have that privacy, have their own space, and didn't want to have to rent an apartment or something in the area while they were taking care of their relative because they didn't know how long it would be. Really good for that. In our own case, we stayed in an RV while we were shopping for a house. We totally did that. It was a great transitional housing for us between our apartment and the house that we're in now. And then after we bought the house, it's a great vacation home for us. Now, in our case, we had double duty, and I'll get into that in the next point, which is full-time in an RV is an awesome way to explore and test out places that you might want to live. So the whole reason we got into this was because we were remote workers. We could live anywhere. We didn't know where we wanted to live. We'd lived a few different places separately and a few different places together, and there were pros and cons to everything. And we decided we would hit the road, stay at all kinds of places all over the country, and figure out what felt like home for us. And you know, you can kind of get a sense on a vacation, but not really. When you're on a blur schedule, you're not going to the grocery stores, you're not bringing your everyday 9 to 5 with you and seeing how it compares to living in the area. There's just something so valuable about being able to live somewhere temporarily, live somewhere else temporarily, do your 9 to 5, and see how it feels and see how it acts. So we did that. We actually figured out where we either wanted to buy land to build a house or to buy a house. We ended up buying a house, and the area feels just like we thought it would because we had been through it a few times, and then before buying the house, we stayed here for a while. And I'm telling you, it's the best for that. Relocation's very expensive, and the closing costs on houses are expensive. You don't want to have to be doing that a whole bunch of times because you're like, oops, nope, this place was only good to vacation. It wasn't really a good place to live. So for us, that was a huge thing. And just having that flexible housing, perfect. Perfect. We could really take our time and find something that not only worked, but that we loved. The next reason that people tend to full-time RV is for cost savings. So housing has gotten very expensive. If you are locked down in a mortgage that's from a while ago, great, I'm happy for you. But for the rest of people who are either buying new houses or are renting, insane. And you know, I've talked to lots of people that that's their whole mission is to save money. It's becoming more and more difficult as the costs of RV parks have skyrocketed because RVing full-time has become more popular since 2019, 2020. You know, the demand goes up, the price goes up. But even so, I was actually a cashier at Trader Joe's. She was really lovely. She was living full-time in an RV with her partner, and we got talking because we were living full-time in an RV. And for her, even when it came out close, when it wasn't that much of a savings for her, she loved the feeling of not being beholden to a landlord. A lot of times she would stay at RV parks and she would pay, so essentially that was like a landlord, but it was a lot more flexible. She would often do like a monthly thing, like a month to month at an RV park is so much easier to do depending on the RV park. And a lot of times she could do weekly or daily and boondock at certain times of the year. It's a lot different than, you know, these places that ask for a lease that's like 12 or 14 months. And if you break it, you're on the hook for the whole thing. You can only really think about moving once a year. Like, it's very different. And frankly, she just didn't want to give money to a landlord. She'd rather give it to an RV park owner or boondock. And I get that. So for our perspective, when we went for 2 years full time in the RV, it was about like having an apartment, like a nice apartment in the city. The nice thing for us is that we had an amazing trip at the same time, so we didn't really care. If we'd wanted to save money, we would have had to boondock more. For us, it ended up not being worth it because we were working full time, both of us, and the memory drain of having to take out our tanks and stuff didn't make sense. Our hourly was such at our gigs that it made more sense to focus on our gigs and to pay the RV park. And it actually worked out really well. Justin got promoted, got a raise that was more than the cost of the RV parks that we were spending for hookups for that year because he was able to focus. So that was our calculus. But depending on what your hourly is like and depending on your situation, it could be different, especially if you have somebody that has like a piece of land and you can just put some hookups on there yourself. Unfortunately, our families of origin, I'm from rural Maine, he's from rural Michigan. They're really tough winters and neither of them had the kind of land set up that would work. The road that my mother lives on is a dirt road, one lane. You couldn't really drive the RV on it. It wouldn't be safe, even if Maine didn't have really tough winters. So, it really depends. Some situations you can do it much more cheaply though, and if you can get that, great. But here's something about that though. I will argue, and I will say this every day of the week. RVing, the way we were doing it, is not a cheap way to live, but it is a cheap way to travel. For sure, especially to travel a long time, full time. We were spending about what we were spending at our big city apartment in Dallas to stay at RV parks. But here's the thing, we were traveling the whole time. We were sightseeing, we were building memories. It was super cool. It was a lot better than looking at the same nice street in Dallas. It was a pretty area, it was a good area. But, the scenery was changing. We were going to national parks. We spent 2 weeks in Disney World. We had lots of really cool experiences that became very affordable because our cost of living was sort of lumped into it. So full-time RVing is a good way to travel on a budget. Now, travel is expensive. So traveling on the budget is going to be like kind of expensive living because living is lower than what traveling is as far as expense. But yeah, that's kind of where it excels, where it really shines. The next reason also has to do with the travel, and that is bucket list travel. So what's a bucket list? Well, most of you probably know, but the idea is things you want to do before you kick the bucket. So if you've got a bunch of things you want to do, one of the issues, and especially if you're busy like us and you work a lot like we do, is that there's so many things to do and it all takes time. For some people, money isn't really the cost barrier. It isn't the cost of having these experiences as much as it is having the time off to do them. And that was certainly the case for us. Time off is a lot more valuable to us because we work so much. So, if we had a couple hours to go do something and we were in Dallas, there are only so many things you can do within a couple of hours of being at home. But if your home is moving, boy, like the times we were in Arizona and we just let's just bop up to the Grand Canyon for the day because it was suddenly an hour away. We were able to make a lot of experiences accessible on a weeknight. We had weeks where we would do 2 or 3 incredible things in just a couple hours after dinner or, on the weekend. And they were different all the time. And there's such a value to that. It makes it so much easier to go through your bucket list. I know a lot of people will hit all the national parks and yeah, that's so much more feasible in an RV. It's kind of the format made for that, for getting every national park visited on your bucket list. I think there's a few that are very remote that are easier to fly to, but man, you can knock off a lot in an RV. The next big reason that people tend to full-time RV is downsizing for retirement. So a lot of people who are traditional retirement age, your empty nesters, that sort of thing, they will actually use RV life as a way to simplify and enjoy their life without the home maintenance, without the landscaping, without the gardeners, without the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 square feet to clean in the big old house that they raised their kids in. They want to enjoy life and keep things simple without the burden of managing a large home. I think that's pretty cool, just like the tiny home thing. It can go either way. Some people really love this. They really thrive. They really enjoy it. And retiring to an RV is where they hit their stride. There are people who think it sounds really cool and they get out there and they're miserable. And those people were louder when I lived at RV parks. So I feel like I met a lot of them. But I know there are people living their best life doing just that. Just the downsizing and all the other things we talked about. Because here's the thing. All of these things on the list, you could have multiple reasons. Like as you hear me going through it, you're noticing that a few of these really applied to us. And case in point, the next one is one that really applies to us, and that is flexible work and remote jobs. We are remote workers. I've talked about this a few times on the channel. My husband has a job in tech that can be done from anywhere. And post-pandemic, it became more normal for his industry to have that happen. And I have actually worked online longer than him. I own my own business. So yeah, the thing about me is I'm always sort of on work even when I'm off. That's another thing. You know, I can do it from anywhere, but I'm always sort of working. So that's one reason we were full-time RVing, is because of that. At least made our lifestyle more possible. There are some people where it's even more ingrained. So I have a good friend who, her husband is a travel nurse. And there's a popular YouTube channel, Happily Ever Hanks, where they were both travel nurses prior to really taking off on YouTube. I believe that's now how they make their living, is from their channel. But they originally were traveling in the RV because they're travel nurses. It's really good housing for that. We're talking about transitional housing. It's really good if you're working seasonally or you're getting moved to different hospitals to have an RV so you can live and work there temporarily. Travel nurses can make some really good money. It can be really lucrative because a lot of people don't want to pull up roots and do that. If you can make good money. Live in an RV, it's pretty comfortable. And then you have it for your other adventures like the Hanks did. You know, my good friend, her husband isn't travel nursing anymore. They got a nice big plot of land. They have hookups. They got a farm going on. It's really cool out there. So they actually have pivoted into just stationary RV living on their land with hookups, and they're saving quite a bit of money, and they're running kind of an event farm. And the event farm is paying for their downsized life. So that's pretty cool too. But yeah, travel jobs. And I know other people will work camp or gate guard. There's some different jobs you can do. I've heard of farmhands and such, ranchers living in RVs. It's, again, kind of the transitional housing, but it can be specifically for work to be temporarily in another location. And the next reason is for family bonding and having adventures as a family. So I know there's been some recent controversy about van lifers and RV influencers and what effects it has on children. I actually even did a video about a post. One woman who had grown up in an influencer family had written about the downsides of it. But I do know that there's a flip side to that, and that having adventures as a family can be good for bonding, can be a really cool experience. I will say my family did not have us living full-time in an RV. And in fact, I did not RV until I was an adult. But my family also was not big on camping, which is funny because I grew up in the Maine woods. But I think when the woods is right there, you know, both my parents were like, no, we're indoor cats. We're not going out. But I digress. I will say that both of my parents really like travel, and we traveled a lot as a family. And we had some experiences where we had, you know, like a big van, and we would stay in hotels, but we would kind of drive around like a road trip. We drove all the way from Maine to Florida, where we did Disney, and then we drove kind of back up and hit Canada and Niagara Falls and stuff on the way back. But that was a really cool experience. The fact that we drove all around to all of those places and stayed at all those places along the way was really cool. And I think that's probably the closest to full-time RVing that I experienced looking back, was that trip that I took with my parents, my 3 brothers and sisters, and my recently widowed grandma, actually. She was with us as well in the van. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of an extension of that kind of trip. But you can do it longer because the kids can be homeschooled, or they can do some distance learning with computers, and you have more room. You don't need the hotels. You can actually live in the RV. And if the parents can work remotely, I actually see why. The next reason that people full-time RV is for a sense of freedom and minimalism. So I noticed this right away, and this is something that even though I'm in a house now that I've taken with me, but when you live in an RV, it's experiences over things. You can't accumulate clutter. You don't have a place to put it, especially if you're packing up and moving once a week like we were. You only have so much room, and some people will fill every bit of available space. Well, we did not want to, you know. If you haven't noticed, I'm kind of a big lady, and also we didn't want the anxiety and the mess and things breaking, and no thank you. So in our RV, not only did everything have to have like a temporary home, like when it was out and about, it also needed to be able to stow away when we brought in the slide and when we, you know, pinned up for travel. I always called it like flight. So when you're flying in an airplane, you got to put the tray tables up. They have all these rules about everything being stowed. I had rules about everything being stowed in the RV, and I was a stickler about it. I did not want things breaking. I did not want the drama, the hassle. So I was very, very careful. I had one mug. I would wrap it up and take care of it. I was very careful with the numbers of bars of soap that I would buy. I was very, very careful. I would not buy things until I used them. There were only certain things, and I would buy small versions of everything. I was very crazy about it. We've actually bought the house, and the house is over 3,000 square feet, the one I'm in. Now you're probably like, what? Why are you doing that? Well, there's a few reasons for that. One, the interest rate situation is so janky and screwed up right now that the difference between a payment on a small house and the payment on a large house is actually really tiny. It's really interest rates that are killing us right now and some of the overvaluations. But with the comps and everything, it's actually really close. But here's the thing. I don't know that I'm in a big house. So some friends of ours recently were like, hey, you want to go to some craft fairs? We did. We went to some holiday craft fairs, December. It was really fun. And I was looking at homemade soaps. They smelled really good. And there was a deal where I could get a few bars of soap and it was cheaper. I think it was like $3 a piece or 2 for $5, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but basically I was like, I don't know, because that would be an extra bar of soap. And my friends were like, Paige, you're living in a giant house. You can buy an extra bar of soap. But it's because in my RV brain, I'd be like, no, well, where would I put it? Like I can only put so much in the shower. I had a little area kind of under my sink in the bathroom. There's only so much room in there. And I haven't gotten the memo. I'm still doing the same thing. And honestly, I think it's good. I think it's good to stay minimalist. I find that I'm happy with less. I actually can afford the house a little better because I'm not over furnishing it. I was able just to kind of just put a few things here and really enjoy the space, not feel like I have to get a bunch of crap. And I do think that that experiential vibe has actually helped me to enjoy my house as well. It's really interesting because I think that RV living trained me for minimalism in ways that are tough to articulate. For example, and I might actually do a video on this, I had for years tried to do a capsule closet, which if you're not familiar, it's a system for clothing, for picking out your clothing, where you aim to have a very small number of clothes that can hit a wide variety of situations. And there's all these different kind of formulas and things that you can do. I found that the fact that I only had so much room in the RV in my closet, and I had certain goals, like I wanted to be able to be outdoorsy and hike and have everyday clothes for that. And I wanted to have maybe, a dress or two to go out to dinner, but it couldn't be something that was really fussy because I didn't know what was going to happen for laundry facilities. There were all these different ideas for activities. It forced me to really clarify what I needed for clothes to go on this trip. And I'll tell you, I have a big closet here. There are like so many closets in this house. They're actually 2 walk-in closets, and my husband and I are sharing a walk-in closet, just one of them, and we are not even filling this one walk-in closet. Like there's tons of extra room in this walk-in closet because we're just wearing the same clothes we wore in our RV. It made me realize I don't need all the clothes that I thought I did, so I'm saving a lot of money on clothes. I actually also learned how to cook very simply in the RV and quickly in a way that now that I have a full kitchen and a dishwasher, oh my gosh, it is so easy to cook. I have so many cool recipes. I can use a lot more fresh ingredients. I can do a lot fussier things, and it's even easier. It's kind of like a hardcore training program, and it's retrained my brain, and I don't think it's going away, and I love it. So do with that what you will. And the final reason that people full-time RV is to escape routine. So I was talking about the apartment in Dallas in a suburb called Addison. It was at Addison Circle, actually, which was a very picturesque neighborhood. It was so pretty that influencers from all over Dallas would come in and do like their Instagram shoots there. Sometimes they were in my way, which was really annoying. Like I'd be trying to like get into my car to go somewhere or get my mail out front, and I would ruin somebody's photo shoot. Somebody's unapproved photo shoot, mind you. Somebody wanted to be a model on Instagram. Anyway, it was beautiful, and I really loved living there, but it was the same thing every single day. And after a while, you get your routine, you're just kind of like, well, this is nice, but is there more? And RV life, it will give you so much more to the point where you get a little stressed out, to be honest. But I'll tell you, from our perspective, we spent 2 years on the road. It was awesome. I have so many memories. I'm so happy. I'm actually really glad to have a break here. But I'll tell you what, I'm sure I'm going to get bored eventually. And that's why I'm glad we kept the RV and we're going to go part-time and do some trips here. You know, right now we're settling in. It's the winter. We're getting everything spruced up, getting stuff fixed. Justin will have some videos on that as well, but it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? You have your vacation home that moves and your stable launching space. But for us, it made sense and it was more affordable to go full-time for a couple years and then, basically buy our vacation home first and then buy our not vacation home while we were living in our vacation home. And, I think that's great. Anyway, I'm sure there are more reasons that people full-time RV, but those were the major ones that I've seen on the road. If you have any more, let me know in the comments, but it's been great talking to you as always. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.